All right, welcome everybody. Thanks so much for joining Tribe Master Your Mind Fireside Chat Series and Tribe Canada's first ever hosted event. My name is Cindy Moeser and I am the co-chair of Tribe Canada. Tribe, which is led by the amazing Phoenix Normand, is a global executive assistant network that is branching out all over the world to nurture our profession. I am so excited to be part of the team bringing this to Canada. I would like to give a special shout out and thank you to my wonderful Tribe Canada co-chair, Amanda Lee Gaffar, who will be helping behind the scenes today. We are so lucky to be introducing you to Tami Zuckerman, an entrepreneur and overachieving mom who will give us a glimpse into how she's mastered her mind and achieved great success in the Toronto tech scene. We are hoping you will snag a few nuggets of wisdom to apply to your everyday life. For those of you that don't know, I was lucky enough to support Tami, as well as her husband and co-founder, Carl Mercier, at Virage Sale for 2.5 years. Tami is a whirlwind of energy, and I have never met anyone quite like her. She's dynamic, caring, and everyone that is lucky enough to meet her sees her passion to make life better and create a more connected and engaged world. Welcome, Tami.
Thank you, Cindy, and welcome everybody. It's so nice to see familiar faces, and I feel just as lucky to have worked with you and to be with you tonight and everybody. So thanks.
No problem. So you've not had a typical career path. So I was wondering if you could tell us a little more about your history and experience.
Sure. So I began in the field of education. I was a teacher for the Lester B. Pearson School Board for 10 years. And then while on a preventative mat leave, I came up with a crazy idea called Virage Sale that took off quite a bit. So we'll get into Virage Sale a little bit more probably during the chat. And then once Virage Sale was acquired, I took some time off, traveled, told the Virage Sale story all over. Then I became a mentor for Techstars Toronto, which for those of you who don't know is an accelerator that leverages tech talent, innovation, mentors, and capital. Then I had another baby, and now I'm embarking on a new journey in opening a school, or rather a daycare, for my daughter and for the community.
That's awesome. The idea of Virage Sale actually started while you were on your first maternity leave with your son. Can you tell the audience a little more about the start of Virage Sale with Carl?
Yeah, so back to that preventative mat leave, I was home nesting, making room for the baby, and I was just selling some stuff on Facebook groups. Now, keep in mind, back then, Facebook didn't have any buy-sell features, didn't have a marketplace, and so I was just using some Facebook groups that were kind of hacked into buy-sell groups, and they were very broken. You would upload photos and they would just disappear. The admins were very stressed and frustrated at lots of people breaking their rules, and so I came up with this idea where I turned to my husband, who's able to code and is in tech, and I said, you know, what if we replaced all of these rules and frustration with some code? And that's where the idea of Virage Sale blossomed. We originally built it for our community, and then it kind of just took off and all over the world and impacted millions of users. So that's where that came from. It was kind of a bit of an accident, actually.
Mm-hmm. And building a startup is no easy task with like long hours and many sacrifices. Taking this into consideration, how did you build an engaging and fun culture at Virage Sale?
So in terms of the staff, the culture with the staff?
Yep.
Yeah, so, you know, I sort of just took what I already knew. There were a lot of parallels in education and in management in any company, actually. And so I use some of those teacher practices because, you know what, little people are just people, and older people, you know, like everybody learns differently, everybody is motivated and inspired differently. And if you get to know your students or you get to know your employees, your staff, and you genuinely care about them, then the outcome is always going to be good. And so that's basically what I did with Virage Sale. I learned how to work with all different types of people, just as I did with my students. I made sure that, you know, I wasn't I wasn't motivating or teaching anybody the same way. I really took an individualized approach. So, maybe how I would ask the marketing team to do something would be different from how I would ask the tech team to do something. And so, and we ran a very horizontal approach. It wasn't top down. Everybody was an expert in their own field, and we respected them. So I think it all just worked because it was a very caring and respectful environment, which is exactly, what we do in our classroom too.
I can definitely say how much we felt cared about it at Viracho. It was pretty amazing. You always went the extra mile to make sure that the little things always were celebrated, and 100% that we felt that we were people and not just employees, which was really amazing. We felt like family, which was really nice.
Yeah, it really did. It did feel like family. And I think it's interesting how today you and I are speaking together here. And it's because we've kept those relationships. There's still garage sale reunions. The staff has still stayed together. So I think it's, I think we also chose a lot of the right people, and that's half the battle too.
Mm-hmm. No, definitely. It was amazing. And it's really great to see that a lot of them stayed in touch. And I think that really speaks a lot to like how you built it, which is great. On that note, like what was the hardest part of building a startup?
So for me, it would probably have been self-care. And actually, I'm sure the question will come up. You're probably going to ask about work-life balance. And so we can get to that a little bit later. But I think for a lot of people, including me also, let's maybe talk about the second thing, which is growing from a startup of 2, like my husband and I at the kitchen table, to a team of 150 people in office, remote staff from all over the world. How do you do all that and create a culture and make sure that everyone is, just all moving towards the same direction? And it changes, people that you hired at the beginning won't always be the people that are there at the end, and that's okay, so but learning how to accept that and how to manage that growth was really difficult, and I learned a lot. And just looking up to the corner, Cindy, because you're at my top left. If anyone's wondering why I keep looking over here, that's why.
And like on the other coin of that, what was your favorite part of building a startup?
So the learning was definitely one of my favorite parts. I think it's added a lot to my life. I've learned about all different sorts of people. I've learned about a whole other career. It's shown me that I can do things that I didn't know that I could do. It's given me so much self-confidence. To be here today speaking to everybody, and I've done this a lot over the years, given a lot of talks and conferences and fireside chats, and those are not things that I ever pictured myself doing, but I do them and I love them, and I'm very grateful for the journey.
That's amazing. You are definitely one of the most passionate people I have ever met. Like everything you do with such gusto. Where do you think that comes from?
I think it's innate. Like I think you're just born how you're born, and I'm a very passionate person, and I have to tell you that there are pros and cons to that. Putting your heart in everything you do is exhausting. It really can be, but on the flip side, it's very rewarding, and I wouldn't have it any other way. And actually, now that you bring this up, it's interesting. I was emailing back and forth with my son's teacher today. I actually wrote her an email this morning about, I just think she's the most wonderful person, and her students are so lucky. And she replied back with a quote that I couldn't believe, because I live by this quote. And so I'm just going to say it. It's a quote by Maya Angelou, the late Maya Angelou. And she says, "I've learned that people will forget what you said. People will forget what you did, but people will never forget how you made them feel." And I live by that. Like, you have to make people feel how they deserve to feel. And I really live by that. And so, and that comes with the passion that I have for people and for life.
It definitely comes across, for sure. That's awesome. I would say that you're a real extrovert. Like I see you on social media, and you're very open at sharing your life, your ups and your downs. I am definitely not that same way. But in general, does this help you build like your online following and your online community?
Yeah, it's a good question. I am definitely an extrovert. Maybe it does, maybe it doesn't. I don't know, but I will say this, like a lot of people think that of me. I'm an extrovert, and then they sort of say like it comes so easily to you to be able to discuss things and to wear your heart on your sleeve and to just announce stuff. And the truth is I do that not only because I want to. I feel it's the right thing to do in the position that I am as a powerful woman in tech, in lots of fields. People are listening to me. I have an audience, so I have this obligation to share. And I have to tell you, like, my life does look pretty perfect from the outside. I'm very aware of that. And actually, I'm very blessed with a lot of things, health and family, and I have a wonderful support system. But like everybody else, I have my ups and my downs. I get nervous about things. I have struggles. I have what they call imposter syndrome. I have a friend, I think she's here tonight. We always talk about that. She's in a position like I am, and we're always like, oh goodness, are we really that good? Yeah, well, yes, we're that good, you know, but we're always going back to this imposter syndrome. So I just feel like I'm obligated to share these things so that people see that I am a normal person that goes through all of the stuff that they do. And so I openly post about the good and the bad. People who follow me know that. And I do. I wear my heart on my sleeve, and I'm very real, and I feel the obligation to be that way.
That's awesome. Do you have any advice for people like me that maybe are like less open? And like, I would love to be more open and more, I guess I just don't have that muscle just yet of like sharing everything. Was there anything that when you started doing this, like, did you learn anything that you could tell us about? And, you know, since we don't feel as comfortable sometimes in the beginning?
So I'm not introverted, so I don't know how I won't pretend to know how it feels. I only know how I feel, but I will say that even an extroverted person doesn't always love to share personal things. Like, just because you're extra, it doesn't mean, again, it's back to that I kind of feel obligated to. And so that means my advice to you, Cindy, and I think this will speak to you because you care so much about people, is that replace being afraid of what people may think of you when sharing these things so that you can be at service for others. So replace the thought of being afraid about what people think about things so you could be at service to others. And you love being at service to others. You love to help others. So if you could just put aside your feelings and just be more open and honest and share freely, then people will then open up to you as well.
Yeah, it definitely takes a certain level of vulnerability, 100%. But yes, I'm so used to, I guess it's part of our EA role a little bit too. Like, we're so used to kind of being behind the scenes, and like really lifting those up that we support so that they get the limelight, that we oftentimes, I think, forget that sometimes, you know, we deserve that recognition, and maybe it would be great for us to get out of our comfort zones. So it's definitely something I've struggled with. But
so next time you want to step out of your comfort zone and you're afraid, just call me.
Okay. And like Tribe Canada and Tribe in general, we're looking to build this community of like-minded and passionate EAs to learn from each other. So, and more EAs are actually starting their own businesses on the side. We call them like side hustles. You know, especially with the times during COVID, a lot of people have started doing that in the profession. So developing those like relationships is like central to what we're thinking about right now. What would you say is the biggest lesson you learned about building a strong and engaged community?
Oh goodness, it takes a lot of time and dedication, and the people building it have to have true passion in it, and so much passion in it, because there are so many peaks and valleys that the only thing that's going to help you sail through that is your passion for what you're doing. I'd also say, you know, back to your previous question, is to be real, to be raw, to be transparent, because people need to identify with you. You know, a big one is also to storytell. Cindy, you'll remember at Garage Sale, and this is a good example. I used to get up once a week with Carl. We would both share stories that happened in the community. There was once this, here, I'll do it now. There was once this, this lady in, I think it was in Metairie, in Louisiana, and her mother passed away, and she was selling a quilt on Garage Sale. And somebody, like an unfinished quilt, it was a beautiful quilt with beautiful materials. And so somebody bought it, and they went home and they finished the quilt. And then they went back to that initial user that they bought it from, and they asked to purchase like a $5 item from her. And when they showed up at her door, they brought her the finished quilt. And so these stories, we would have these stories coming in on a daily basis, people finding best friends, some people getting married from meeting on Garage Sale. And we would share our life's work so that, you know, people felt like they had purpose in what they were doing and that they were part of that community. So I think with Tribe Canada, if you're trying to build community, it's really important to share the stories that are happening within your community, so that people can learn from them and be inspired and motivated. And then I would say, sorry, I have a lot on this one. Building community is really my thing. I really enjoy doing it, and it just comes very naturally to me. But I would also say to constantly learn, like watch how people in your network behave, ask lots of questions, survey them, find out how they're doing, and then, you know, tweak and rinse and repeat and all of that.
That's great advice. I love that. And speaking of EAs, what would you say are some of the benefits of working with an EA?
Okay, well, first off, I'd like to say that I personally feel like the luckiest person in the world to have had Cindy as my EA. And I know that Carl, my husband, would say the same thing. We were very blessed. Cindy, I got to just share the story. Like, we interviewed a lot of potential EAs, and we weren't having an easy time finding one. And Cindy walked into our office, and I literally said, was it me or Carl who said to each other, like, what did we say? Who was it?
You didn't say anything. You looked at each other.
We looked at each other. Finish my story. Finish my story.
So like, well, when I went into the interview, they were both sitting at in an office, sharing a desk almost. It was quite cute. Right away we started talking about I have a history, actually. Many people may not realize this, but I actually started off as a child and youth worker. And when I got into the field, I realized that my 5'0" stature didn't help me, and that a lot of the kids could become very violent. So I realized very quickly that, you know, I probably couldn't do it safely, and we were debating starting a family. So I got out of that field, and the first thing I was like, okay, what can I do? What am I good at? And I always was very organized and very good at you know, customer service. I spent many years in retail and McDonald's and doing all those kind of things. So reception kind of worked, and then I just built my path towards like the executive assistant. And I think Tami and I just bonded over, because I think one of our first questions was like, how did you get into the field? So I had no idea, you know, that Tami, I knew she was a teacher, but we kind of bonded right off of that. And we had this very easy way of speaking and seemed to really like connect on a deeper level. It was really amazing. And then all of a sudden, like Tami and Carl just looked at each other. They didn't say anything. Yeah. They just looked at each other and they said, okay, just give us a sec. Literally like typed on the computer, and then like the COO came in and like with an offer. It was, it was like really magical in the sense of like, I was in a really rough spot in where I was coming from. My confidence was quite like, took a hit at the job that I was doing before Garage Sale. So when I had this experience, I was like, oh my gosh, maybe I'm not like, because I was really in my head about, okay, am I good at this anymore? Is this my passion? Like, what am I doing? And it just like ignited everything. So it was really nice. I needed that at the time, and I feel the universe kind of dropped Tami and Carl into my lap.
Yeah, and the best part of that story is that Carl and I did lock eyes that day and hired her on the spot with the look of an eye. We both knew, and we said, okay, when can you start? We both just knew. So that's how great Cindy came across to us, and then she really proved herself throughout her journey at Garage Sale. So going on about that, your question were what were some of the benefits of working with an executive assistant? And actually, Cindy, you taught me a lot about how to work with one. You were my first executive assistant, so I wasn't quite sure. I knew what I needed. I needed somebody who understood that, truthfully, my work and my home, they were all intertwined, and I needed somebody that cared enough about both and was willing to help me with both. And Cindy was willing to do that. So all of her experience as an executive assistant through like working with boards and investors and all of that, but also being like a mom, that really helped, I have to say. So and I think also some of the biggest benefits, and again, I'm speaking from just my experience with Cindy, is that I felt like we were on a team together. I didn't feel alone because Cindy was always there, and I could tell her anything confidentially, and I could trust her. And I think trust is a really, really big thing. And you built trust with me really, really quickly. I also have a good sense of character, so I feel like I was able to see that in you. So it's important when selecting an EA that you choose that, and when you are an EA that you give that off, you know. There were some EAs that would come in just, you know, negatively talking about other people, and then you just know, like, that's not, that they'll do that about you too then, right? So she was there for all the big board meetings. I could trust her to make sure to have everything ready and professionally done. But then, like, I needed to find a school for my son, and I was new to Toronto. I had no idea how the school system worked here, and she took it upon herself to make a whole spreadsheet of every school and what are the pros and the cons. And so I really appreciated both the personal and business approach to her work with me. And yeah, Cindy, as you said, you're super organized, and you taught me a lot. I'm also super organized, but you taught me a lot of new skills that I didn't have before. So I think an EA can really organize your life. And finally, I would say that you felt like my biggest fan, like my cheerleader. You were always there on the sidelines for anything that I was doing, big or small. And so I just felt like I had someone on my side, and I think that's really important in the role too.
Yeah, that was great. We had a great working relationship. And one thing I learned as part of working with a couple, for anybody that hasn't worked with a couple before, they don't speak at night about what you think they would speak about. So when I first started, I just kind of assumed if I brought something up with Tami that Carl would know about it the next day, or at least have some inkling that we discussed it if it was urgent. And I found out that it was really great that they kept work and life very separate. But that was a really big learning about not assuming that a couple would speak in the evenings about work. I kind of assumed the opposite. So that was, you know what they say.
You're not the first that's been surprised about that. I know the director for the daycare that I'm opening is here tonight, and she said the same thing to me. She's like, do you guys talk? And I'm like, no, we have a great time. We talk, we watch TV shows together, but sometimes we have learned to kind of like tone it down a little bit with all of the business talk all of the time, because that gets it gets to be a lot over the years, especially when you're both entrepreneurs and always working. You gotta, it's that life work balance thing again that I don't have down pat, but like I try.
Yeah, and that was actually going to be my next question about work-life balance. So like, do you have any advice on creating it or maintaining it? Like, for example, I know we used to make sure that you and Carl had time together on a date night, like every Friday. So like I would cut your calendar off at a certain time just to make sure that you could go and get ready, or you could, we just made sure that you made the time. together?
Yeah, so I would like, but we would take turns making our date nights, and I'd book restaurants and whatever. And then I found out Carl was asking Cindy to find the restaurant, and he told me, not you. But anyways, so yeah, there are those little things. Try to separate it a little bit. But honestly, I feel like people talk so much about work-life balance, and I think it's an easy thing to even Google. But what I want to say is that really and truly, anyone that tells you that they've figured out work-life balance, especially an entrepreneur running a startup, like somebody, a business owner, and anybody else too, anybody who's passionate about their work, I'd say they're lying. Like, maybe I'm wrong, but I haven't figured it out yet. But here's what I figured out. The best advice I have is to forgive yourself for not being the perfect founder, the perfect manager, the perfect mother, the perfect wife, the perfect friend, the perfect daughter. You're not going to call people as much as you should. You're not going to pay attention to people as much as you did in the past, because now, I had a family, I had a business, and you need to forgive yourself for that and let it go a little bit. Because if you just let the guilt get to you, especially that mom guilt, it's going to eat you up. So rather than trying to figure out work-life balance, try to do all of the little things, date nights, if you can afford to have a cleaning lady, have one, that kind of stuff. But really work on forgiving yourself for not being 100% all of the things, because it's okay,
That's great. Yeah, I need to do that a little bit better. So that's fairly great advice.
And my kids, one day, I had so much guilt about traveling and not being there for some of the milestones, but my kids, they know what I've done, they know what I've built, and I hope that it motivates them or inspires them in some way. So, and then the times that I was here, especially when Noah, my son, was really young and I was traveling so much, that I really made it count, like you just, maybe if I was there all of the time, I would have kind of, maybe not noticed as much as I did when I was home. So.
Mm-hmm. And you also do a lot of mentoring. Can you tell us a little bit about your mentoring that you do?
Yeah, so I joined the Accelerator of Techstars, and basically I mentored and still mentor some founders that are starting their journey as entrepreneurs, mostly in tech. And I share my stories more than anything. I don't believe that you can give advice. And I learned this through, I'm also part of Founders City, which is a network of founders that get together in small cohorts and discuss their business life, their personal life. And we were forum trained, so like cohort trained on how to share experiences rather than giving advice. Because giving advice, you can Google all the advice that you want, but sharing experiences and what you've been through, people can then just take what they see, like what they see is, I don't have the words, the parallels that they see in their life, and they can take that and use it. So when I mentor, I share stories about what I've been through, what I did, and I give advice based on that.
That's great. And what is the best advice you would give right now to somebody that is facing like a job loss during these unusual times of due to COVID?
Yeah, so these are crazy times. I don't know. This is all new to me too, and COVID has hit so many people. It doesn't matter whether you're building something huge or you're doing something huge or even something small. People are losing their jobs right, left, and center. COVID nearly took our new company. Like, I was almost on the verge of selling our house and all of our investments. I can't tell you what we've been through this year in making sure that this school that I started to build, it would still be built, and thankfully it is. But so my advice would be, we could have given up, but we didn't, and it's been really hard. But don't give up on your dreams. keep going. But then if the door does close and you're completely forced, then cliche to say, but after every closed door, there's an open window, and it's like, it may not make sense today and right now, but I think later on, you'll understand that this was just part of your journey, and you'll move on to something new. But it's really, really tough in the moment. So I would say to just, it's easier to say, just stay positive, but try to channel those negative feelings or the sadness or the fears even into doing something else. And actually, I've learned a lot of startups, you can shut down or you can pivot and try something else. And some startups have become really successful because they channeled all of that panic into starting something new and really hustling to do it. Because in these times, there's no time to just like sit on it.
And would you say you've had those kind of experiences in the past? I don't know if many people know, but Garage Sale was the first company in Canada to be invested in by Sequoia Capital, which is a huge investor and well-known in the tech space. Would you say that you had those kind of experiences when you first were fundraising for Garage Sale, or did you have any of those kind of ups and downs or fears or times? Could you tell us a little bit more about that?
Yeah, absolutely. Talk about COVID, you could say that hit like 50 times throughout the Garage Sale journey. The roller coaster was intense. The peaks and valleys were really high and low. And so I have to say that I built a lot of resilience through building that company. Even at the end, when we decided to sell Garage Sale, it's not like I woke up one day and said, you know what, I want to sell this thing. I want to like get rid of it. It was just that the space, was getting crowded, and, Facebook, dare I say the monopoly of Facebook, decided that they would build a marketplace. And I knew that Facebook, being so big, couldn't build the type of community that I wanted to build. Like, I was trying to disrupt Craigslist and Kijiji and really build a safer and better place to buy and sell these household items. But they went ahead to do it, and they did a decent job. And actually, when I went to Facebook, I had a meeting at Facebook, and the executive that built Facebook Groups is the same one that built Marketplace. She said to me, because I kind of went in to find out like what was happening with this marketplace that I was hearing about, she said, I just want to say, like, congrats, this Canadian girl built this thing, and we've been very inspired by you. And by that, she meant she copied so much of what we did. And then like the middle of that sandwich came, and she said, but just know that, Facebook built community, and we know exactly what we're doing. Basically, like, if you're trying to be acquired by us or anything, we already know what we're doing. We're fine. And then she closed that sandwich by saying, but out of respect for you, Facebook Marketplace is launching in Canada at so-and-so date. She said, it's confidential, please keep that, but please, I want you to make a decision on what your next steps are based on that. So I had a decision to make. It was like, do we sell the company, or do we continue on the journey we were on? If we continued on the journey, it would mean that we'd have to raise more money. And what investor is going to invest and go up against Facebook? And that's when I had a reality check, and I said, you know what? It's time to find a company where Garage Sale can grow up, somebody who will keep Garage Sale and let it run, so I don't let down all of our users. But it's not time to continue to build this thing. And my founder heart wanted to continue, but I knew that it wasn't right. I knew that we'd end up shutting down because, it's just Facebook was doing it, and they did it. And today, it's funny. I use Garage Sale. I use Marketplace too. And it's not perfect, but I've made peace with my decision. And I think that, back to the question that you asked, these peaks and these valleys, just like COVID, I had so many of them, but you just need to kind of roll with the punches and then just accept your decisions. And that's that's what I've done and have learned to do in the future.
And have you, being a woman in this kind of environment, we know there's a lot of talk about lack of diversity and gender on boards and in companies and everything. Did you have any ups and downs that you might be able to share that maybe we would see in our industry?
So, I found that towards the middle of, so let's say over the last 5 years, there's been a huge movement with women in tech, women in powerful positions. And I think that we're headed in the right direction. I won't say that we're there yet, but all of even the talk about it, it comes up in most fireside chats. It's all moving towards the right direction. And I would just say that we need to keep trucking along in asserting ourselves in these positions and making sure that we, our self-talk is always that we are good enough, we are strong enough, and that we've got this, Is
that hard? I haven't been able to teach myself to, my self-talk to calm down a little bit. So do you have any advice when it comes to that? I know you talk about needing to calm it down. Was there anything that you've done to master your mind a little bit, just to is there any techniques or anything that you would say that have helped you, or anything, any kind of insights you might be able to give us in helping out with that?
So I did hire an executive coach, actually, a woman who, goodness, she was such an inspiration to me. And I would just tell her all of the real thoughts that I had about myself, about what I was doing, about how I would sit in these board meetings with Sequoia Capital. I was previously a kindergarten teacher, and now there's all this, tech lingo, and I'm sitting with a notebook, writing down all the acronyms, and Googling later. And so I was doing all of this and thinking that it was a bad thing. And I was hiding behind this, this isn't my career. I can't do this. That self-talk, it's really, really bad for you. And she taught me that you need to change what you're saying to yourself. She literally would have me look in the mirror and recite positive things about myself. And she really put a magnifying glass in front of me to say, but look what you've done here. And I think that I used to, and I still do it sometimes, I used to, when somebody would compliment me, I would play it down all the time. I still do sometimes. I'm still working on that. But you need to learn to say thank you and own it. And you know what, Virage Sale, a lot of people are oh my gosh, I can't believe you built this thing. It's amazing. How did you do that? And I'm always yeah, it just kind of happened. It didn't just kind of happen. Yes, the idea happened. But, navigating through the process was a big deal. Executing it was a huge deal. And so we need to stop with the putting down of ourselves and say that we are good enough, we are strong enough, and people like us.
That's awesome. Can you tell us a little bit more about what you're doing now? You mentioned that you're doing a school, or can you tell us a little bit more about that?
Yeah, sure. So I'd love to. We're laser focused on the Little Campus. That's the name of the school. It's a daycare, and I'm building this. I want to call it. We call it the state-of-the-art daycare, because it's similar to Virage Sale, where I'm starting a company to fulfill a need for myself and the community again. When we moved here with our 2.5-year-old, it was really hard to find a good quality daycare. And I don't just mean the curriculum itself, but these daycares in Toronto are tiny little boxes with playgrounds in concrete parking lots with some rubberized mats. And so we were shocked to see that, because coming from Montreal, where real estate is easy to come by, there's lots of green space. And so I always said, if we ever found a really good space or whatever, that maybe I would open a school or a daycare or something. And then I continued on with Virage Sale. Then I had another baby. And guess what? She needs to go to daycare. And it's a 3-year waiting list to get on any daycare. And again, I just didn't want her playing in these little parking lots. And so we found this rare gem of a building that has a ½ acre of green space. And not only that, I get to go back to what I'm very passionate about, which is working with children. I won't be working directly with the children, but I did get to build the curriculum, which is really exciting because it focuses on the whole child approach, which is an approach that I wholeheartedly believe in as a teacher and as a parent. So that's just to explain a little bit more about that. It's all about the social and emotional learning. A lot of the stuff that we're discussing today, because at the end of the day, we want our children to be well-functioning adults. And to do that, we need to start really early working on the whole child. So, you know, not just academics, but like their mental health, their physical health, building their self-esteem, their self-confidence, their self-worth. And then we'll have well-functioning, happy, healthy adults. And so to get to do that, to get to build a child's foundation right from this early age is really, really exciting work for me. And I'm blessed to have this amazing director that I know in the city that came on the journey with us. And again, I'm doing this with my husband, who's helped so much on the business side of things as well. So that's pretty much what I'm working on today, and I'm really happy about it.
That's great. Yeah, Tami used to call Garage Sale her second baby. So it was nice to see that they expanded their family again. And I wish I'd been able to spend more time with your second as much as I'd spent with Noah, but unfortunately, COVID hit.
Yes.
Mm-hmm. So that's all the questions that I had for you tonight. So I wanted to see if we wanted to open up to questions or if there was anything else that you wanted to talk to the group about.
I'd love to open it up to questions. Why don't we just do that? I've done a lot of talking, so.
Awesome. I'm just going to unpin myself on the screen here so that we can let other people ask.
And I'm going to jump in because there weren't any questions posted in the chat, but I think what we could do is if you do have a question, you can unmute and dive right in.
Hi guys, it's Phoenix. Tami, first of all, thank you so much for joining us today. I really, really, really appreciate you making the time. This is sort of a labor of love for me as the leader of Tribe. You know, bringing people together and giving them, you know, content that they can really kind of extract whatever it is that they need in order to you know, get through some hurdles or jump through some hoops if necessary, or sort of change their thinking. And the reason why I called it Master Your Mind is really because I think a lot of people push themselves just to a point, but they don't go for the mastery of it all. It's more of just getting through it as opposed to mastering it. So the question I have for you is more around the fact that, you know, I'm a business owner, multi-business owner now, and I know the sort of internal language that I've had to sort of sift through. So I guess the question I have for you is, you know, at what point and kind of what really was that sort of seminal moment where you decided, you know what, I do belong here. You know, clearly I've had, if I'm talking to Sequoia, clearly I belong in the room. Do you see what I'm getting at? So I'm just kind of curious, like, when did it hit you and what did you do from that point forward to really get from, you know, the sort of narrative that was almost sort of given to you into the badass, clearly, that you are, and multiple businesswoman where your trajectory now is in the direction that you choose versus what people chose for you? So I know that's kind of a long question.
No, but it's very clear. Thank you. So when was that? I'm trying to think of the moment. I don't think it was an exact moment. I think it was, and it definitely wasn't when we first got our fundraising from Sequoia. I remember getting that day, I was on a plane when I found out, and I had sunglasses and I put them over my eyes because I was just like kind of so emotional about the whole thing, you know? And then I went to the first Sequoia event where I met like the founder of Sequoia, and I was like, pinching myself, you know? And so that was really at the beginning of the company. So it wasn't until we really started to see some real growth, like retention with our users, growth of the garage sale team, really starting to see the data that showed success. Because you can raise money and you can burn all that money, right? And you may never grow or whatever. When I started to see, so I would say that it was when I started to see all the data, all the growth, and our team grow, it all sort of hit me somewhere in the middle that like, wow, we did this. And I didn't think I could do this, but we did this, and we're still going to do this. And then when things got really tough, we went through a round of layoffs, I remember, and then we overcame that. And so I think going through the hurdles and going through all the motions, I slowly began to believe in myself more and more over time. But honestly, Phoenix, I think the biggest aha moment or whatever probably came after the acquisition. Like, hindsight is a really powerful thing. I kind of looked back after and was like, wow, like what did I do there, you know? And so now it's like, to some people, opening a school is not a big deal, and then to other people will be like, wow, she's opening a school. It's like, for me, I feel like now I can do anything. I really, really do feel that way. But I would say that that was post-acquisition, actually.
That's fantastic. Thank you for that. That's exactly what I want to hear.
And I love what you're building, Phoenix. It's very exciting. And it's needed. It's really, really needed.
There's a question in the chat from Brissa. When are you planning to open? Guessing the school.
February 2020. We were supposed to be opened, oh gosh, already. I want to say it was in the summer. And COVID hit and really delayed our financing, actually. And so it's just been like, we've had to become really creative and have a lot of stamina in working through this. We've had a lot of support from mentors, from family, to get this done, but we're now getting it done, and we're in exciting times.
That's so good to hear. And I'm just personally curious because I'm thinking of just the social media world that we live in. And I know, when my daughter is, a career woman now, but when she was growing up and going through school, there wasn't the social media. How does that factor into your school? Or does it? Social media, or I guess just technology in general.
You mean in my school? You mean how does it in business? You mean in general?
Well, how does it factor in with your curriculum or with the integration with the children, or does it?
So at a very young age, I mean, just going through having a baby again, they really say that for the first 2 years, you shouldn't be exposing your babies to technology. It's after the 2-year mark that you can start with a little bit of educational TV or whatever. So social media is not a big thing for kids that are under 5. Really different in elementary school. And of course, I'm not teaching anymore, but if I was, I would say that in school, we need to enable children to learn how to use social media, how to app enable them rather than just saying too much. Like, we all know too much screen time. Okay, we already know that. But now, like, when you're on the screen, what are you doing? What could happen? So as a parent now of an 8-year-old who has my husband's brain, who is very into tech, very into social media, we've chosen to app enable him and teach him what's out there, all the good and all the bad. But in my school, in the daycare, that won't be a thing. We'll use social media for our parent network, though, to make sure that we have a private network where we can post, Instagram stories and their kids if they've allowed that.
Mm-hmm. Interesting. Let's poll the group. Is there anyone else that has a question for Tami?
Looks like
Yeah, I have a question for Tami. So Tami, I know of Sequoia. I know there are no small potatoes. Doug Leone, one of the more senior ones, is not an easy one to impress. So along the way, when they were starting to talk to you, whether it be Doug or the other partners, was there anything that they said to you about your product, your technology, or the way you run your company, or the way you want your company to grow? Was there anything there that they criticized you for? And then what was your comeback? If there was a criticism, was there anything there that you thought, you're absolutely right, and this is what I'm going to do about that? Or were the criticisms sort of unjustified? And if so, how did you stand up to that? Because they're a beast. Sequoia is a beast. And if you're not from the Valley, it might not seem obvious, but they've penetrated mostly everything, right? Phoenix is going like this to me. So I'm curious to know, just because I remember how tough they were.
Yeah, so what you see in the movies is kind of true, you know, in terms of investors being sharks, but I was actually surprised. So we worked with, our partner was Brian Schreier, and actually just a really nice, intelligent person who, and I'm getting to the real stuff too. It was not all roses, okay? But it started off really great, where Brian saw a partnership in Carl and I. He really believed, and Sequoia in general invests in founders that they believe in more than anything, even more than the company itself. And then they also saw that I was the main user of my own product, and so that really spoke to him. And then of course he decided to invest because of the growth that he saw. So like half of our users were coming back 6 times a day, so the retention was just like huge. So all of those things are what made Sequoia invest in us. And by the way, when I say Brian, it doesn't work that Brian decides and that's it, he invests in you. It goes back to all of the sharks at Sequoia, and you need to pass through every single partner before they decide to lend you that money. So it's no easy feat. So Sequoia, let's start with the good. They did a lot of events where they would have us out in the Valley. I went to base camp a couple of times where we camped out in very nice tents. And they brought in speakers like Elon Musk. They brought in people that who have climbed Mount Everest, you know, Army sergeants, people high up in the government, where they all told us about their journeys, and they were raw and real. And so they really did a lot for their founders in terms of helping them along their journey. So, and I don't know if that always was the case, or if that's been a movement with all of the other movements over the last 5 to 10 years in mental health and all of that. But they really did care about us. That said, there were times, you know, in board meetings where they had some tough feedback for us, for sure. If they didn't see numbers that they wanted to see, or if they wanted us to monetize sooner than we could, and they would offer, you know, advice, and it was like, sometimes, you know, they really didn't know the product well enough to, you know, to merit the advice that they gave. And that was sometimes a little bit, you know, difficult. So there were times like that where we had to challenge them. And I think we were pretty good at that. I think that we were good at challenging when we disagreed. And I think it was a pretty good relationship where they respected when we did have to challenge them. At the end of the day, their advice was advice only. They weren't dictators. And yeah, like I'd say overall the experience was pretty good. That said, if Sequoia doesn't agree with you on something, you know, you're not going to get to the next step. They are the people who make all of the intros that you need. They are the people, if they don't reinvest, nobody else is reinvesting. So they do have that power over you. And, you know, at the very end, when, you know, the decision to sell or to whatever, I didn't have so much choice towards the end. We really didn't, because it was like, I didn't get the feeling that they would reinvest with everything that was going on. And so I knew that that power that they have over us was a real thing. Does that answer your question, Rowe? Yeah, okay.
Okay, great. I love this question. Walk us through a day in your life, Tami. Many are struggling with getting it all done, so it would be great to hear how a CEO does it.
You want to be stressed out? No. Okay, so I wake up in the morning and I do get to shower. I've got a really great partner at home. My husband is a very involved father. So we're kind of tag teaming it with our kids in the morning. Carl wakes up with the baby. I wake up and get a shower, so then I can pack Noah's lunch and get him ready for school, and then off I drive him to school. And actually now Addie, our daughter, is really jealous that he's going in a car. So the whole family gets into the car. Like, we have time for this. And we all drive to the school at like 8 in the morning, because it's just like, they kind of rule us that way. But it's kind of nice, you know? So we all get there and drop off Noah and get home. We are lucky to have a nanny at home because we are both working. So then at 9 o'clock she starts and she's with the baby. And that's when I usually get to my emails first thing in the morning. Then it's kind of back-to-back meetings. And then I try to be involved. Like when COVID happened, it was like I was a chef and a cleaner and every last thing, because you couldn't have your cleaning lady come, and at the beginning we weren't doing any sort of takeout, and so even today I'm still doing those things where I'm preparing meals and all of that stuff. And then, the end of the day, there's no daycare at school for Noah because of COVID, so I got to pick him up early. There's no more working until 4:30, 5 o'clock kind of thing. My day with work stops at around 3:30, where I get him. I then usually go to the park with him, and I'm like standing there going, I have so much to do, but I need to stop and be in the moment and be a mom at the park. And I do that. And then, it's come home, make dinner, clean up dinner, get the baby in the bath, the bedtime routine, get my son in bed. And all of that usually ends at 8, where I can get back on the computer to finish whatever work I have or events like this. And then I usually get in an episode of something, because I missed out on 8 years of television. Okay, I just went through the show Jane the Virgin. Anybody who hasn't seen that show needs to see that show. So, I was like, how come I didn't know about the show? Oh, 2015, I was so busy. I didn't watch a movie, I didn't watch TV, I had no life whatsoever, and I've changed that. It's like, fit in one episode of something per night, or fit in whatever it is that you do, that you like to do. So I'm not that interesting. I like TV, okay? Like, I want to say my hobby is something else, but I really like TV. So I get my one episode in, and then I go to bed, usually on my phone, which I shouldn't be. The end.
Well, it looks like that, and I love TV as well. I think a lot of us can relate that it just lets you shut your brain off for just a little while, and not have to worry about other things or other people, just kind of some downtime. So can totally relate, and definitely Jane the Virgin was one of my favorite ever. So it's such a great show. I just wanted to say that it's 8:30, so we're gonna have to wrap up, but what a pleasure it has been to reconnect with you and get to share you with some of my, EA colleagues, and we're just so pleased that you were able to join us, and we hope that, you've enjoyed kind of getting to know us all as well.
I did. I really enjoyed this event. Thank you for having me. I'm humbled that you chose to have me here tonight. And I hope I feel like I've done a lot of talking, but I hope that my experiences resonate with some of you or can help you in any sort of way.
Amazing. Thanks everybody for joining us. Hope you guys have a great night. Thanks again.
Thank you.
Bye.
Great
Thank
night,
you.
everyone.